Hello and welcome to World News here on TVP World. My name is Diana Skaya. Senior officials from the Trump administration mistakenly included journalist Jeffrey Goldberg in an encrypted group chat discussing classified military plans for airstrikes against Yemen's Houthi targets. Now, according to The Atlantic's editor-in-chief, he was added to a Signal group chat where officials discussed weapons packages, targets, and timing, seeing the plans nearly 2 hours before the strikes began. On March 11, Goldberg received a connection request on the Signal messaging app from a user identified as Mike Waltz. 2 days later, he was added to a chat called Houthi PC Small Group. At one point during communications over the strikes, J.D. Vance appeared to question Donald Trump's stance, writing, quote, "I am not sure the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. There's a further risk that we see moderate to severe spike in oil prices." Vance added, though, that he is willing to support the consensus. Now, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth dismissed those reports of those classified war plans against the Houthis in Yemen, and that they were shared via text message. Now, speaking to journalists upon arriving in Pearl Harbor, Hegseth denied any such leaks and accused the journalist involved of repeatedly spreading false information.
Information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic, and were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning. And you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
U.S. airstrikes on Yemen's Houthi rebels continued into early Tuesday, marking the 10th consecutive day of attacks. Now, the strikes have targeted sites across the country, with one attack in the capital, Sana'a, reportedly killing at least 2 people and wounding over a dozen others. Now, the U.S. campaign is part of a broader strategy by President Donald Trump to pressure the Houthi rebels, who pose a threat to not only maritime trade, but also Israel, as well as to exert pressure on Iran, their primary backer. Now, while the specifics of the targeted sites remain unclear, U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has claimed the airstrikes have taken out key Houthi leadership, including their chief missile expert. Now, the Houthis have not confirmed these claims, with the rebel group often downplaying losses while inflating their own attacks and successes, including attempts to target American warships. Turkish authorities have detained over 1,100 protesters, among them several journalists covering the ongoing civil unrest in the country. Now, the protests in Turkey broke out after the arrest of Istanbul mayor and Recep Tayyip Erdogan's main rival, Ekrem İmamoğlu, on corruption charges.
Police in Turkey used water cannons, tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the demonstrators. The main opposition party has announced the protest will be held until Tuesday. On social media, Ekrem İmamoğlu called for peaceful protests and restraint from the police.
Dear young people, stay away from conflicts. Be good to our security forces, police officers and people whom I love very much. Let me see you all with smiling faces tonight. The nation is great.
Imamoglu is not the only jailed official in Istanbul. 47 of his allies and associates, including district mayors of the city, have been jailed pending trial, and the Ankara mayor's office faces scrutiny over alleged public fund misuse. The government has defended the crackdown. The Turkish interior minister has said the detainees have ties to criminal and terrorist organizations, while President Erdogan over the weekend blamed the opposition for provoking the unrest.
Speaking about the peace negotiations between Russia and the United States and Saudi Arabia on Monday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Russia remains the only actor prolonging the war.
Today, representatives of the United States spoke with the Russian delegation. More meetings between the Ukrainian and American teams will follow. I also expect a new report soon. We need to move toward real peace, toward guaranteed security. This is what we all need in Ukraine, in Europe, in America, and in the entire world. For those who want peace and international relations, Russia is the only actor prolonging this war and tormenting our people and the entire world. To force Russia into peace, we need strong actions, strong steps. We are ready to support every strong initiative that will make diplomacy more effective, and this means applying pressure on Russia to make them want to end the war. That includes sanctions, support for Ukraine, and international coordination. We are preparing a substantive push with our European partners this week on specific security measures, joint security efforts.
Now, amidst all these peace talks in Saudi Arabia, a Russian missile strike hit the northeastern Ukrainian city of Sumy on Monday, targeting residential areas and critical infrastructure, including a children's hospital. Now, the attack, which caused significant damage to the city, affected at least 30 high-rise buildings, 15 private residences, and several warehouses, offices, and medical facilities. Now, the missile strike occurred as U.S. and Russian officials were engaged in those peace talks in Saudi Arabia, where they were discussing a potential ceasefire. Now, Sumy is located just under 30 kilometers from the Russian border and has faced continuous aggression since the onset of Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces reported that Ukrainian Air Force strikes targeted a Russian troop concentration in Kondratkova in the Kursk region on March 25, killing up to 30 Russian soldiers. Now, Ukrainian sources claim that the strike destroyed the target and say that Ukraine's pilots and troops will continue to target Russian positions in order to degrade Moscow's military strength. Reportedly, operations will now focus on Kondratkova, a rural community near the Ukrainian border in the western Kursk region, which has been a focal point of ongoing fighting. Now, this attack follows a cross-border incursion by Ukraine into the region in August 2024 and a Russian counteroffensive earlier this month that led to the recapture of the town of Sudzha. Now, while the American president has repeatedly stated that Ukrainian forces are, quote, surrounded in the Kursk region, Ukrainian officials have denied these claims, acknowledging only a withdrawal from Sudzha. Russia has begun previously scheduled military drills featuring its RS-24 Yars intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads. The exercises, announced by the Russian Ministry of Defense, are taking place in the Sverdlovsk and Altai regions of central southern Russia. The RS-24 Yars is a long-range missile with a range of up to 11,000 kilometers and has the ability to carry 3 to 6 independently targetable nuclear warheads, each with a yield of 150 to 300 kilotons. The drills are part of a broader inspection of Russia's strategic rocket forces, which began this week. During the exercises, military units will conduct command and staff drills, and they'll also perform tasks involving engineering support, protection against radiation, and defense against chemical and biological weapons. Satellite imagery shows that Belarus is intensively building military infrastructure in Asipovice in the eastern part of the country. According to military experts, this could mean that the Russian army is preparing to deploy part of its nuclear arsenal to eastern Belarus. Asipovice is a town in the Mohilev region of Belarus, some 100 kilometers from Minsk and 190 kilometers from the Belarusian border with Ukraine. Now, the town, which already has infrastructure connected to artillery and missile forces, drew major attention after statements made by Vladimir Putin and Alexander Lukashenko said that Russia will place its Iskander missiles and tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. According to Radio Free Europe, since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, military infrastructure in Asipovice has vastly expanded. Construction work on barracks and ammo depots also continues in several places throughout the town. On Monday night, EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, urged the international community to keep backing the Gaza ceasefire agreement. In an interview for Israel's Kan News network, Kallas added that Israel has the right to defend itself while abiding by humanitarian law. She declined, however, to comment on whether Israeli authorities committed any war crimes.
We want to really call on all parties going back to the ceasefire agreement and really, release all the hostages and continue to have a way out of this. Of course, Israel has the right to defend itself, and on the course of this, it also has to respect the humanitarian law, which says that you have to spare civilians and civilian lives. Whether any crimes have been committed or not, this is what the legal institutions, the judges, the courts will decide, and I'm not in a position to say that.
Today marks 4 years since the arrest and detention of Polish-Belarusian journalist and human rights activist Andrzej Poczobut in Belarus. Authorities in Minsk sentenced him to 8 years in prison for, quote, inciting hatred. Poczobut, who is a Polish and Belarusian citizen, has been in prison in Belarus since his arrest in 2021. According to Minsk, the journalist, through popularizing Polish culture in the country, attempted to shed a positive light on Nazism. His trial began behind closed doors in January 2023. In February, the court sentenced Poczobut to 8 years in a strict penal colony. Since then, he has been held in the Novoplotsk facility, which has the reputation of being one of the harshest in the country. Now, while he appealed the sentence, the motion was denied by the Belarusian Supreme Court. According to available information, before the trial began, Poczobut declined an opportunity to avoid prison time in return for leaving the country for good. And moving on now to the world of sports, Polish tennis player Magda Linette stunned number 3 seed Coco Gauff and advanced to the quarterfinals at the Miami Open. Now, the unseeded Pole overpowered the American star 6-4, 6-4, and will now come up against Italy's Jasmine Paolini, seeded number 6. The world's number 2 Polish player Iga Świątek also booked a spot in the quarterfinals after scrapping past Ukraine's Elina Svitolina 7-6, 6-3. The Miami Open is the last prestigious tournament before the hard court season ends, giving way to clay courts where Świątek usually shines brightest. Its culmination will come at the turn of May at the French Open, a tournament 23-year-old Świątek has already won 4 times before. And on that note, we end this edition of World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching and stay with us here for more news and features.